Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the City of Alameda's Juneteenth celebration with the Black Achievers Alliance. Thank you very much for your patience as we had some technical difficulties getting started. I'm Sarah Henry, the city's public information officer. Before I turn things over to our host, Robbie Wilson, to introduce our speakers, please note all participants have been muted. For the first half of the celebration, we're going to hear from our distinguished speakers. Congresswoman Barbara Lee will then be joining us for a few minutes by phone. And for the last half hour, we're going to open things up to Q&A. At any time, you can submit a question for any of our speakers using the chat feature. The celebration is being recorded and is live on the city's Facebook page. We'll post a recording later today on the city's YouTube page. In 2016, Robbie Wilson and the Black Achievers Alliance organized the first celebration of Juneteenth here in Alameda. Robbie is a healer, and for many years before that, and for the many years since, that Robbie continues to work to unite our community and lift up Black voices. The work she does in particular with Alameda's youth is meaningful and impactful and life-changing. I can't go anywhere with Robbie except for maybe a bar where a kid is not running up to give Miss Robbie a big hug. So Robbie, thank you so much. If we were all together, you'd be getting a giant round of applause right now for all that you do for our island.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. I wasn't expecting that little bio there, so I appreciate it. I appreciate you always being willing to go the extra to make sure that the Black Achievers Alliance and our voice is heard, and so I thank you for that. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in today. This is really overwhelming a little bit to me. Like Sarah said, I did start the Black Achievers Alliance five years ago through the Alameda Unified School District, and it was out there living here almost 20 years, realizing that just like when I was a little girl, Juneteenth and Black history isn't taught in the schools. And so I wanted to create an organization that would support my daughter in learning Black history, but also the other children of Alameda, to make sure that they, all colors, know Black history, because it truly is history. And without Black history, you're not really telling the whole truth. And I'm a person about truth. And so today is such a celebration to be able to talk to so many across the web, because I was wondering how I was going to do it with the COVID and everything in a way that was educational. And so thank you to the city for this gift of sharing their space that is allowing Black Achievers Alliance to hold this today. I want to thank my speakers, the speakers today. And what this is a discussion. We have 90 minutes, and I've been told I can have a little more time, but 90 minutes to really discover for a lot of folks what this day truly is. I know as a child, I didn't learn about it until I was probably in my late 20s, even heard about it, and really didn't do anything about it until probably in my 40s. And so it is something that I know people hear about, even in the Black community, but it doesn't necessarily mean they know what it means. And so I want to give us an opportunity for all people to have this lesson today. Yes, always in my forefront, I am pro-Black, I will be honest, and it's in my forefront because I need to be. I need to make sure that young Black children see examples of Black achievers. That's why I've invited folks on here that I truly respect and believe are Black achievers, and that's why I chose them today to be our speakers for today, our educators for today, however they want to see themselves. I first want to talk about Tanya Harris. She's the principal at Otis Elementary School here in Alameda, and she is amazing. The work that she has done over there in a short amount of time has to be heard. It needs to be highlighted throughout the island, because I believe that she has figured out a formula to start bringing equity into the education system in Alameda Unified. And that's where it begins, you guys, in the little kids, elementary, to start teaching them then. So by high school, they're holding these Zoom sessions. Then we also have my brother Rafi Shabazz, which a lot of people know him around the island. He's done amazing work. His bio is extensive. I know him as a person when I need to call and say, yo, what are we going to do? What do we need to do about this? He has wisdom. A lot of times he calms me down, but he has a lot of wisdom about Alameda history because he has lived here, and he has fought here, and he is a voice of Alameda. So I appreciate Rashid for being here today. Also, we have John Jones III, which I respect so much. I love listening to his words of wisdom. He has a unique story, and I'm sure he'll share a lot of in his talk today. But I respect his journey. And I respect that through his journey, he hasn't forgot to give back and to make sure and to empower the next generation. So much respect to you, John Jones III. And then Kiki Monifa, you know, I reached out to her for I look at her as wisdom of Black history, period. And, you know, I'm fortunate, I'm thankful that she was able to videotape earlier and her schedule didn't allow for her to be in the Zoom. But when I said, could you just share your wisdom? And she was like, oh yeah, she was happy to do it. So thank you, Sarah Henry, for making that happen with the video today. And then last but not least, oh my goodness, Congressman Barbara Lee. She is such an inspiration to me in the work that I do. I am over the moon that she's going to be able to spend some time with us today, and so I want to stop my talking and allow our speakers to begin so we have a good schedule so she can get on and then we can have public comment. So Sarah Henry, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back. And our first speaker, I guess, would be Tanya Harris.
Wow. Participation is amazing. Thank you for joining us. Happy Juneteenth. This is incredible to see this community coming together. I want to thank Robbie for all of her hard work and her diligence. I met her in 2016 when I first moved to Alameda and started working here as principal at Otis Elementary School. We ran into each other casually and just connected immediately. And before I knew it, I was a member of the Black Achievers Alliance and sitting at the district office under her leadership. And we've been close friends and she's been an inspiration since. So thank you, Robbie, I love you. Thank you for continuing to do the work, even through the most difficult and challenging times. I just want to name that in 1991, when I was 18 years old, Rodney King was beaten brutally in Los Angeles. 18 years later, when I lived 2 miles from the Fruitville BART station, we lost Oscar Grant. 3 years after that, we had Trayvon Martin. And I just want to say those names because here we are again. But during this time, I keep coming back to a poem by Tupac Shakur. We are in the middle of a concrete jungle right now. We are confronted with ugliness that we cannot turn a blind eye to any longer. And through this conflict, through this ugliness, I truly, truly think change is happening. This is our moment and we need to hold on to it and we need to move forth. For me, Juneteenth is a celebration, but it's also a reminder of the work that we need to continue to do. 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, slaves in Texas learned that they were free. But freedom is still fleeting for us. We are still trying to grasp it. And I'm looking around and I'm seeing so many of my Otis Owls here with me. My families are here with me. They welcomed me into the community immediately. They believed in my vision. It was like we had just been waiting for each other. It takes a village. I joined the village and we started the work. I also see Susan Davis. She has been such an inspiration for me and she has had my back through thick and thin. We've gone through some difficult things at Otis and we have persevered and we have come through that concrete like a rose. I also want to thank Tina. She is our board president and she just has supported me 100%. It is difficult to be unapologetic about the change that needs to happen. And it is through this community that I still stand strong. So I want to thank all of you and I really appreciate the support that you all are giving to the city and fighting for change.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Yes, I worked for the school district for almost 13 years, and I've just seen and been so impressed by the work you guys are doing over there at Otis. And it is to be an example, I hope, for the rest of the island to start taking a look at and maybe figuring out some ways they can bring the same kind of program to their school site. So thank you so much for your share. I'm just curious, question for you. Do you remember what age you were when you first heard about Juneteenth?
Robbie, I grew up in Oakland. I went to Oakland Public Schools, home of the Black Panthers. My kids are African-American boys, went to school in Oakland as well. Juneteenth was not taught in school. I did not know about Juneteenth until I was about 18 years old and started to do some self-reflection and some identity work for myself. And we have to do better. We have to do better in having those difficult conversations around race. And we have to do better around teaching history to our kids. And when I say history, yes, I mean African-American history, and I don't mean just slavery. And I don't mean just African-American history, but the contributions of the African peoples to the world that we live in, the influences and the impact we feel today.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Is there any words of wisdom? Because this is an opportunity for us to inspire the Alameda Island. I mean, I think so many things are happening. There's so much spark and electricity in the air right now. It's beautiful. I think we really are on the winds of change. And so people are listening, I think, for the first time more than I've ever seen in my almost 20 years here. Is there any words of wisdom, anything you can tell the public, the community that is listening now, how they can support Juneteenth, how they can support the Black History movement or the Black movement here that's happening on the island and throughout the nation?
Sorry, Sarah and everyone. I have children. I'm a mom, and they are in and out, so I keep muting myself, and then I'm not able to unmute myself. Some words of wisdom, some advice. Well, if we want this to be, we're on 23 days of protesting across this nation. Protests are happening globally, and that is amazing. We need to continue to do this work. It cannot be a novelty. We have to work on not just being inclusive, but we have to do work within ourselves to be actual anti-racists. We have to move away from assimilation and be anti-racists. And I think that the way that we do that is doing a lot of internal work, checking our own biases. Even those of us of color have our own biases. We need to check our own biases. We need to be comfortable being uncomfortable about what is going on in the world around us and how that might be making us feel. We need to be exposing our children to different races and cultures and people, and that's through literature, and that's through experiences, through, you know, as soon as we can get out of the house, where are you taking your children in the cities? You know, what streets are you walking down? What graffiti art are you looking at? What restaurants are you patronizing? And what conversations are you actually really having? And then I think families, you need to ask your teachers and you need to ask your principals, what are you doing to create an inclusive and celebratory environment where everyone feels emotionally safe? Ask us, and then join us in the work. In 2016 at Otis, we started an equity and inclusion committee, and we actually changed the PTA bylaws. And so the head of that particular committee is actually now on the PTA board. And when we look at our fundraising and we look at how we're going to spend money, we look at it through an equity lens, and we look at it through an all children, all child perspective.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate your wisdom. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to my brother Rafi Shabazz, who probably needs no introduction here in Alameda. Always welcome his wisdom. So, brother Rafi.
Thank you, Robbie. Assalamu alaikum, and peace be with you all. My name is Rafi Shabazz. I'm an Alameda resident, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak today. I think because I engage in historical research, I'm the one to give a little bit of the history around Juneteenth, and I'll do that, share a little bit of my own experience before I get into the bulk of my remarks for today. And so, ironically, I'm here in front of a statue of Abraham Lincoln, and someone just went by, and many of you have probably heard the adage that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and I'm gonna touch on that, I guess, myth, if you will, remarks. So, Juneteenth is a beautiful day. One, it is my mother's birthday, and so I give honor and thanks to her as well. But it is the commemoration of the liberation of African people in North America, or at least kind of legally, let's say. And so in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation during the Civil War as part of one of the tactics to reunite the Union. And for folks who don't know, the Confederates, they left the Union because they wanted to continue slavery in the South as well as expand it westward. And so with the Emancipation Proclamation, it didn't reach the Confederate state of Texas or the colonized or occupied territory of Texas until June 19th, 1865. And so it was at that time in which a general order was given that let the folks know that they had actually been legally freed 2 years before, or nearly 2 years before. But in reality, African people had been freeing ourselves long before that. Prior to being put on the ships that brought us here in the holes, whether it was on the plantations in South America or North America, Quilombos, the Great Dismal Swamp, Black people been freeing ourselves. And I just want to really emphasize that, not waiting on some piece of paper to tell us that we're free or have liberty. And so on this this day of Juneteenth, a year later after this, Black folks celebrated. And they called it Jubilee Day. And these celebrations continued for a long time. And with each generation, it took on a different meaning. And so for that first generation up for slavery that had actually experienced it directly, they celebrated in particular ways. For those who knew that we were still being lynched, we were still held in captivity through convict leasing and other systems, as Douglas Blackman called it, slavery by another name. They celebrated in particular ways. And this continued all the way to the time when I was a child, when my mom, whose birthday is today, she would take me to Juneteenth celebrations in Fillmore. And that's a district in San Francisco that's been thoroughly gentrified. But now they got a Black Lives Matter mural painted on the streets. I later, in my teenage years and as a young adult, I would come here to Berkeley, to South Berkeley, to celebrate Juneteenth. And so I'm grateful that I was able to be exposed to that by my family, my West Alameda community, and Black folks in the Bay Area. And I just actually want to correct something that was said at the introduction, that the first Juneteenth celebrations happened in 2018. The first one I attended in Alameda that I recall was actually in 2004, and that was on Alameda Point. And so I think it's really important to recognize that because so many Black people in the Bay Area, particularly those who came during and after World War II, we have ancestral roots in Texas. It's very much a Southwest sort of celebration for Black people. So west of the Mississippi. So anyway, with that said, I do want to get into what my remarks are today, noting the fact that this celebration has taken on different significance this year because of the two pandemics, the pandemic of COVID-19, as well as the ongoing pandemic of white supremacy, and particularly the racist police violence that we've seen all throughout the country, as well as some people recently discovered has been occurring right here in the city of Alameda. And so the title of my remarks today is, why Alameda owes Black people reparations. So starting with the recent incident of Molly Watkins, which will play out in some way, I imagine, through the legal system, if not through the political system. But this is not something that's new. Tanya mentioned earlier in 1991, the Rodney King uprising in LA and that incident. Well, right here in Alameda, right there, there was an incident in Alameda, with the Alameda Police Department. Some refer to it as the MDT incident, the mobile digital terminals. And in this incident, some officers were found to have been playing around on the computer, sending messages to each other in their cars, saying things like they would go and dress up wearing blackface, or they would dress up as the KKK and go shoot Black people. And this was just one of a number of racist incidents that led to lawsuits, as well as there was sexual harassment, a lot of things happening in the Alameda Police Department at that time. And so this is not something new to Alameda and Black people in Alameda in particular. Now, a few years ago, there was a report when there's the attempt to bring cannabis dispensaries to Alameda. And during that time, there was 20 years of data that was collected that showed that for marijuana-related arrests in Alameda, 32% of the people from 1997 to 2017 that were arrested were Black people. And so now marijuana is legal in the state of California. And now there are dispensaries open up in Alameda, how many are owned by Black people? And so you had so many folks who've been arrested and brutalized right there in the city of Alameda, as the police are those who police the boundaries. They tell people to stay in their place. That's why so many people I grew up with didn't want to cross Webster Street, certainly not Grand. And some of that continues to this day. But policing is just the tip of the spear, the tip of the iceberg. You can look at the education system. The Alameda NAACP in 1964 was looking to sue the Alameda School District for segregation. The attendance boundaries that were built in Alameda in 1959 were based around segregation. So it wasn't just a de facto system, but in fact de jure. It was something that was very intentional to put people in their place. And so when we think about place, recognize all of these are layered upon the underlying racist geography. So underneath the surface here in Alameda, the city of beaches and homes, there's a whole history of racist housing policy and practice. Some is federal, some has certainly been statewide, but there's a lot that's local. So it started with the restrictive covenants that said that Caucasian only, or people with Caucasian blood, could be the only people in areas like Fernside and Firstside Marina, Bayview, right across from Encinal, and likely throughout the island. We just don't know exactly where. There was another layer placed on top of that with zoning. And so the industrial section of Alameda that was created with the zoning ordinances of 1917 and then later 1922, it essentially codified the private discrimination that was created by realtors in the city of Alameda for profit. Then later on, we have the redlining system where the north part of Alameda was graded red or graded D because of his Oriental presence, and particularly, or the presence of people who were called quote unquote Orientals at that time, and the presence of Black people. And so this redlining system, what was then used to distribute federally insured loans for generations. And so it is upon that which generations of Black people were deprived of being able to build wealth. Right there on the north side of Alameda on Grand Street, where the central substation is for the city of Alameda, where you get your electricity from, that was the home of the Hackett family. And so the Hackett family bought that property in 1895. And in 1935, Alice Hackett, her descendants were threatened by legal action by the city of Alameda, the Bureau of Public Electricity, to sell that property. Now, there were other people in that area where the central substation and the battery property is. Nonetheless, the Hacketts seemed to be the only ones who were threatened with legal action. And so it was the dispossession of Black people in Alameda that allows us to have electricity now. And so this is why I say you can talk about 8 can't wait, and there's a whole bunch of other reforms that people can do, but until there's a truth and justice tribunal in Alameda, or an effort to deal with the truth of how Alameda has dispossessed first the indigenous people, but then later Black people, you will never have anything substantive to really heal. And so in the name of restorative justice, or what we will call reparations, this is what I put before the people of Alameda, that this is what's owed to Black people from the past and to today and for the future.
Thank you. I mean, I knew you would have the facts of the dates. And so thank you for all of, for sharing all of that. And as you were speaking, it was just triggering to me. And what's been coming up for me is, yes, it's how we, even though this day is quote unquote a celebration, we've never really been, I mean, in my sense, free, because it went from that to the prison system. And then so just like you're saying, the red line, the different things that's keeping us out. A lot of times I feel like, yeah, we never got out of the civil rights. It's still a daily thing. So I thank you for bringing that to light, because so many of I work for APC, and so many of my families, you're right, still won't go past Webster Street, and it hurts my heart. And so the reason that the Black Achievers Alliance and the work that I do, and there's times I'm tired and I don't want to do it, but I keep doing it because it's so absurd to me that a people will not feel safe where they've lived most of their life to cross over, and that has to change. And so I'm curious, Rashid, you talked about reparations. What are some things? I think that's a goal, and that's and I'm all for that goal, right on. But what are some steps that we can do now to really start the ball rolling? What are some steps that we can do? now, to give people some inspiration for people that they can do now to start the healing?
So I think first, to one of your points, one of the things that's important when thinking about Juneteenth for me is the concept that I ain't free until all my folks free. Here in the hills of North America or to the African continent or anywhere there is oppression and injustice on God's earth. So with Juneteenth, we wait, until those last people knew they were free, and until all our folks who are being held captive in these golden gulags, as Ruth Wilson Gilmore calls them, these jails, concentration camps here in North America, until they're free, how am I going to be free? I think that I could certainly suggest some things, but as I've shared with you personally, I would prefer to be a part of a collective of people that tell people what to do, or not necessarily tell people what to do. That sounds a little Trump fascist, I prefer to be a part of a collective in which we give people guidance on how we can get to the point where there's the presence of justice. But until then, it ain't gonna be no justice, ain't gonna be no peace.
Yes. And I'm not surprised by that answer from you. I know you all enough to know. Just thought I'd give it a try. But, thank you always for laying it down. You know what I mean? One of the things I respect about you, that I've known you since I've been in Alameda and doing this work, is you spit truth. Like, no matter the circumstance or audience, you're consistent. And so I always appreciate that about you. So again, thank you so much for joining us today in this discussion. What time we got here? So should we go ahead and, because Barbara Lee's coming out at 3:45, correct? Can't hear you, Sarah.
No.
Yes? Okay.
Sorry. I would go ahead and have Mr. Jones speak.
So she's coming 3:45? Yes?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, all right. So we got 4 minutes. So let me ask Rashid and Tanya, because I'm gonna wait for John Jones to do his speech. But between Tanya and Rashid, as a community, what is your because we are having this discussion around the Mali, and there are discussion about how we can heal the community. We talked about how we can heal the community, and I am about healing. What are some things that, let's say, if you want to offer the allies, people are inundating me with the allies, what can we do? And for me, I am a person of unity, and so I want to definitely guide them, or not guide them, but make sure they have a role in this if they desire. How would you approach that or if people are asking you, what are some answers you're giving them? And that's for Tanya and Rashid.
First and foremost, please vote in November. And I would also say that not just vote, but there needs to be some grassroots efforts to support other folks in getting out to vote. Some door knocking, some picking people up, or ordering Uber, or dropping off their ballots at the post office, whatever it is that we have to do. I think that this November election is critical. There's a fork in the road, and we need to decide which path we're going to take.
Yeah, I agree. I think both nationwide and local, this election is going to be important to make sure the right folks are, making the right decisions. I mean, we've definitely had 4 years of, I don't even know what to call it, and then we roll into a pandemic. So I really think it's time for us to heal as a nation. I mean, really as a world, and we're kind of being set up for such a thing. What do you think, Rashid, or if you have any input on that?
So define allies.
Well, what I'm saying is anyone other than Black that has come up to me and said, what can I do? I feel like I want to help, but I don't know what to do. That kind of person. So anybody other than Black right now, currently, is seeking to become. Let me say seeking to become an ally or an accomplice. Let me add seeking in there first.
Thank you. I guess y'all can mute me. As long as I don't have only 3 minutes for those who get that joke. So what I would say, so first, the spectrum of people who are not considered Black or don't identify as Black is very wide ranging. So different people are positioned differently, and I'm not making like some Rachel Dolezal joke. Like non-Black people of color are positioned differently here in the U.S., as well as other people based on class and geography and other things. So I guess the general thing I would suggest to you, because I think you get more of those calls than I do because of how I answer these kind of questions, I'm not interested in allies. So like in the Quran, Allah tells us that men and women we're allies of one another, and so that's where I get some of my conception around like allyship. But I also recognize in social justice or social movement sort of terminology, the concept of ally kind of goes on this spectrum from being in solidarity with someone, then moving up to being an ally, then moving up towards what they would call a co-conspirator or an accomplice, and then ultimately to that level of a co-liberationist, if you will. And I forgot the sister's name who came up, I think, with that framework, or at least visualized it. But if you at that level, like you feel bad, Allah tells us in the Quran, if you see an injustice, strike out with it with your hand. And if you can't do that, then speak out against it with your tongue. And if you can't do that, feel bad about it in your heart. And that's the weakest level of faith. And so that guides me in this work where, all right, you feel bad, alhamdulillah, like all praise to God, that's good that you actually feel. Like you haven't been desensitized to the point where you don't feel anything. But how can we move you to another level? How can you move yourself? And so that's understanding your own positionality, how you are set up in this system of oppression and how you may contribute to the oppression of others. And then moving on to another level besides feeling bad, then it's like, oh, okay, well, now I understand how this system works and my place in it, and I'm gonna work to undo that. And so working to dismantle these systems that you may benefit from, but that is oppressing somebody else. And then ultimately getting to that point of recognition where you realize Mario Savio said, you no longer want to just be a cog in this machine, and your liberation is bound up with that of other people. And so you can go ahead and join Showing Up for Racial Justice, Surge. There's some meaningful, woke white folks in Alameda that can do that work with you. But Rashid ain't doing that on Juneteenth for free, unpaid labor. Like, go join Surge, Google anti-racism, or talk to Robbie, and I emailed her all this stuff, and she could direct you to that.
All right. I see we have Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a true honor to the city of Alameda, but especially personally to me. You're definitely one of my cheerleaders, and so thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on this call today. So welcome.
Listen, I really appreciate it.
Can you repeat that, please?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I want to just thank you for inviting me to be with you for a few minutes, and thank the mayor and all of the panelists. I've had a chance just to listen for the last few minutes, and all I can say is I associate myself with all of the remarks that have been made, and I want to say Happy Juneteenth to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and it's so important that we celebrate Juneteenth. And I've done this since, the day I was born, because I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas. And my grandfather was born in Galveston, Texas, and my great-grandfather in the 1800s. And so Juneteenth, for myself personally and our family, has really been our Independence Day. And my family in Texas, this was, such a huge marker for us. And I'm so glad that the history has been laid out about this, because we recognize this as the great Fannie Lou Hamer said. He said, nobody is free until everybody is free. And so I hope that everyone understands that still African Americans are still being dealt with policies, programs, institutions which are embedded with systemic racism. And so we have to, on days like this, commemorate our emancipation, but also reflect on the darkest chapters in American history and what we must do to move forward. When you look at how millions of children and women and men who were abused, they were massacred, children were taken from their families, were sold as property in this country, we've got to honor those who fought and sacrificed their lives to end slavery, and thousands of unsung heroes and sheroes whose names we'll never know. Yeah. I wanted to just mention a couple of things in terms of acknowledging this legacy of racism and discrimination that still lingers today. And we have seen, unfortunately, very recently, the manifestation of systemic racism in the brutal murders of Mr. Floyd, Mr. Brooks, those in my district, throughout the country. And this is nothing new for African Americans, unfortunately. We've had to live with this for generations, for centuries. And so I'm so proud of the young people who are out in the streets saying enough is enough. We have to recognize when we look at the disproportionate rates of African Americans as it relates to COVID-19, many of my enlightened, progressive white colleagues can't understand. They call me and ask me, what is this? Why are we seeing this? Why are you all dying like this? Why are you getting the virus? And I have to explain to them what systemic racism is and how it manifests itself today. And so in Congress, we're working on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We're working to declare Juneteenth a national holiday. I'm working on my, and I hope you get a chance to look at it, Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Resolution, because one of the issues in America, as we think about Juneteenth, is that we have never had a reckoning with the institution of slavery. 40 countries have had Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, which really brought forth for the public record and for people to testify and understand the connection between the genocides and the brutal human rights abuses, slavery, all of those terrible atrocities that have gone on through history, where they have commissions set up to do that, to get to telling the truth, to get to healing, to get to real transformation and breaking. Here in America, we've got to break these chains of the Middle Passage and slavery, because when you look at the fact that most people, if you're not African American, don't understand the importance of Juneteenth. Most people in our schools have never even studied the historical context for systemic racism. And so we've got to present the case like other countries have done, like Rwanda has done. And we say through my resolution that it's not about reconciliation, because there's nothing really to reconcile for African Americans in this country. This is about transformation. It's about disrupting and disbanding old systems of oppression and building something new that's based on justice and equality to transform this country. So I think this is a moment where, as we celebrate Juneteenth, that we have to see the large context of the slave trade and enslaved people and what this country did. And I'm not talking about personal kinds of, personal attacks on people, but I'm talking about a government-sanctioned system that enslaved people. And so our government has been responsible for the mass systemic racism that we see today, because it's never broken the chains of middle classes. So just thank you all again very much for doing this today, and I hope that we can move forward. And in our own local communities, you can look at my Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission. You can do this in Alameda. You can do this in the district. You can take elements of that resolution and develop small groups and citywide conversations just about how you connect the atrocities of this country to what we see today as it relates to mass incarceration, police murders, discrimination and racism in housing, in not having access to clean water, and environmental racism, and all of the systemic issues that that we have to break those chains in order to achieve some semblance of justice for African Americans in this country. So thank you all again so much for having me on with you.
Thank you. Could I ask you one question? I know your schedule is tight.
Oh, sure.
I'm working with, they claim me I'm their adult guide with the youth here in Alameda, and they are strong. They are leading amazing peaceful protests. I mean, thousands of people are showing up. It's been beautiful. And I know some of them are on this call today. I was just wondering, is there any words of wisdom you can give them? Because you've been doing this fight for a long time, and I say successful. I look up to you, like I said, but is there any words that you can give the young folks? I mean, I'm dealing with kids that are as young as 12 years old that are youth activists here in Alameda. Just some words from you.
Sure. Well, let me just say to our young people, if you study history and broken and how the Voting Rights Act came into play and the Civil Rights Act, it was young people who changed the country, who changed the world. You may want to, if you didn't see the film Selma, look at that. And so just know it's your time in history to take this baton and run with it. And you are absolutely doing that, because what you're doing, and I watch and I participate with our young people on all fronts, and they are talking about not tinkering around the edges. You guys are talking about real systemic change and real justice. And so I would just say to you, the adults are following you guys. And so you cannot let up. You cannot stop. You have to make sure you take care of yourselves, make sure you protect yourselves from COVID, and make sure you study and do everything you need to do personally. But you can't let up on trying to change, because you are part of that transformation. And I have been so proud to watch everything that you do in order to be with you. You know, I was with a community working with the Black Panther Party, and we stood down the police. Police murders and brutality were taking place way back in the day, and there were young people who stood the police down because of that. And so just know that people who are trying to pass laws and who are trying to make things better and who are trying to reinvest as a they're listening to you, and you all have got to keep it up. And so thank you again.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, take care. And happy Juneteenth.
All right. Happy Juneteenth to you, ma'am. Thank you. Woo, well, that was a treat for me. So we are, that was a treat for me. That was like one of those dreams and visions, because I've been doing this work a long time, and so to hear her wisdom, is just a blessing. So thank you again to Congressman Barbara Lee. We're going to go ahead and move over to my friend. I'm so inspired by this gentleman, Mr. John Jones III. His wisdom, his experience. I think he has a special lens on this topic. When I formed this, it was about the education system, it was about the history, and it was about how can we celebrate when people still aren't, like Rashid said, every Black person is not free. And so when we talk about that in America, we talk about the prison system. We talk about the pipeline to the prison system. How in Alameda, yes, I agree with what she said. Like, there's going to be 4 dispensaries here on the island, yet there are still people on the island that have records from cannabis. So that is an odd thing. And so how do we heal those kind of conversations? But then how do we celebrate when we're still dying in the street, when we're still at a higher rate being arrested for minor crimes doing longer times? And so, John Jones III, I offer the microphone to you, my friend.
Thank you so very much. I want to begin by stating clearly that the Honorable Congresswoman Barbara Lee speaks for me and my family.
Me too.
So with that being said, my name is John Jones III. I'm on staff with Just Cities, where I serve as a Director of Community and Political Engagement. And I won't belabor all the historical facts that I will share today, because I appreciate this opportunity. But for me, I want to start with something that is crucial. History is not a mystery, because his story is not my story. Let me say that again. History is not a mystery, because his story is not my story. We've heard the elements of Juneteenth, And it's interesting because when people talk about folks like Abraham Lincoln, he is built and framed as this great emancipator. When in reality, the Emancipation Proclamation was essentially a war strategy. It was meant to weaken the economic infrastructure of the Confederacy, which was predicated on owning slaves. In fact, history bears witness to the fact that there were still 4 slave states remaining in the Union. So if that was Lincoln's true intention, why did he not free the slaves in those 4 states, right? Shows you a lot. I want to share something as well. Juneteenth for me is not a celebration of freedom. It's actually a reminder of the systems and the machinations that form to intentionally keep us in bondage. In addition to being a 3rd generation East Oakland resident, I'm also someone who was formerly incarcerated. And here is where that correlation rings true for me on a personal level. When I was arrested, the burden of proof of guilt lies with the prosecutor. When I went to trial, the prosecutor said that I had a criminal history, but did not produce certified documentations to back that up. I served my prison time in Washington State, which, similar to the federal system, is predicated on a point system. There's a certain number of points assigned based on past convictions. I used that as a basis to win my appeal, which I won twice. The first time I won my appeal, the same judge sentenced me, gave me the same sentence. Mind you, my sentencing range was 6 to 12 months. At this time, I had spent 15 months in the county. I had 8 charges. I was found guilty on 1, mind you, by an all-white jury. The judge gave me the maximum sentence, 10 years. By the time I won my second appeal, I was 5 years in. The judge said, well, he did 5 years. We got enough time out of him. We're gonna release him. So I came back, and when I was released, because my new sentence showed that I actually had more time served than what I was sentenced to by 20 months. The condition was I was supposed to be on parole for 18 months. My lawyer fought, and the judge agreed to give me credit for parole. So I returned back to the Bay Area, where for the next 18 months, I was both unsheltered and unemployed, despite being a licensed aircraft mechanic. Nearly 3 years later, I was pulled over leaving a Warrior game, and I was told I had a warrant from the state of Washington. Apparently, the prosecutor appealed my appeal and strangely won. So they sent me back to Washington State, where the prosecutor wanted to place me back into prison and to serve out the remainder of my original sentence. This despite the fact of all the work I was doing in the community at this time. So I wanted to give that as a backdrop because I want people to understand when we talk about injustice, it's not just rhetoric. We have to understand these systems, how they are designed. Many people say the system is broken. I disagree. I submit to each and every one of you, the system is doing exactly what it's designed to do. I can't celebrate Juneteenth as a holiday that freed us because we're still not free. The 13th Amendment is very clear. Slavery is abolished except punishment for a crime of which one has been convicted of. So today, slavery still exists. It's legal. It's in the Constitution. You just don't know it as a plantation. You call it San Quentin, for example. The backdrop of the current climate of police brutality is really allowing us to understand how state-sanctioned violence works. And it works in 2 ways. The first is the police. As Dr. Huey P. Newton so eloquently stated, the police is the instrument of the system. Police officers, just like soldiers, do not create the policies. They implement what decision makers value. And when we talk about values, policies and budgets are moral documents. It's a direct reflection of these values. See, police officers can be held accountable. It's the reason why if any one of us receive a minor traffic infraction, what is the penalty? It's financial. That's meant to disincentivize that form of behavior. But yet, law enforcement, not just locally, but if you look at our federal budgets, right, where our military is spending, folks are incentivized. There is no incentive to reduce to stop the harm. Police is also a profession. How many of us with jobs can do the things that police do and not only keep our jobs, but get a raise? There's something wrong with that. But we have an opportunity in this moment, because I always share, a movement consists of a collection of moments that are united. And we have to harness the energy of today and the energy of these issues in a manner that's going to really implement the solutions that's needed. But it starts with being educated about the policies, the programs, the systems, how these things work together. I want to share two last things. One starts with communication, because as Brother Rashid shared, when the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, we're talking about the 19th century, and the infrastructure as it relates to communication was difficult because it took weeks for information to be shared, whether it's through the Pony Express or things like that. Same thing holds true today. Our ability to receive and share information is informing a lot of what we see. But I want to be clear, police brutality did not just start. In fact, growing up in East Oakland, I had two of my childhood friends murdered. One, Jermaine Adams, was shot in the back of the head by the Oakland Police Department. He was running away. He had a bag in his hand. They claimed he had a gun. Another childhood friend, Lamont Watts, was choked out behind his grandmother's house. OPD claimed that he was trying to swallow crack cocaine. None of this is new. None of this is new. All of us bear the responsibility of ending this. And I want to get to the point of what people call white allies, with the understanding, with a clear understanding that alliances are formed predicated on mutual self-interest. I want everybody white in America to understand you bear a direct responsibility in ending this. Because at the end of the day, these actions, democracy is supposed to function according to our consent. So you have an obligation to share that these things do not speak for you. You have an obligation and a duty to organize your family members, to organize your coworkers. You know who among you holds certain viewpoints. All of us do. All of us have this responsibility. For me, it's always frustrating when I hear things labeled as a Black issue, because what it does, it absolves folks who are not Black of their responsibility of addressing the anti-Black racism that exists not only in their community, but that also has been systematized. That's why these things continue to play out. Point of Juneteenth. I've learned Juneteenth actually through my mother, but I also learned Juneteenth through someone else. I went to Holly Elementary in East Oakland on 85th. I had a white teacher. I was part of the gifted intelligent education class, and she taught us about Juneteenth as well. And for me, that was always a moment of inspiration, because the background I came from, usually it was assumed that only Black people would talk about these issues because we say things like Black history. But I want to be clear, what we call Black history is actually world history. We can't treat it as it's an elective, because the first people on this planet are Black people. So I want us to stop saying the first Black this and the first Black that, because that happened at the beginning of time. We're just now becoming woke and understanding this reality. The last thing I want to say as it relates to communication, there are three key things in my lifetime that I observed. And I noticed that there's a tendency to diffuse that energy. The first was 9/11. There was a brief moment in time, for those of us who remember 9/11, it was a period of time where many people were, enamored with the NYPD and the NYFD. We saw the images of them going into these burning buildings. And it seemed like America was at a point where people were saying, you know what, we got to stop this white and Black issues. We have these other enemies, terrorists. This is what happened in Oakland. A few months later in West Oakland, Oakland police officers were brutalizing Black residents and planting drugs on them. And those events led to the reason why the Oakland Police Department has been under federal oversight for nearly 2 decades. The year 2014, I was working on the minimum wage in Oakland. Across the nation, folks were organizing, they were galvanizing around the fact that people were not being paid a sufficient amount of money to take care of themselves. And once again, when I saw who was impacted by that, it was people from all races, backgrounds. It was a unity there, a consensus. But then what also happened that summer, Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson. When we talk about police brutality, it becomes a divisive issue because different communities hold different notions of what policing looks like. This year, 2020, what we're experiencing, COVID-19, a global event. And I want to be clear on this. Because of the shelter in place, I really believe that afforded people the opportunity to actually witness George Floyd being murdered by that cop in Minneapolis. But let me be clear, he was not the first person murdered by law enforcement. He definitely was not the last person murdered by law enforcement. I really believe in terms of communication, when they talk about weapons of mass destruction, I view the media as a weapon of mass destruction. What it does is it creates predictive programming where people respond in predictive ways that usually lead to us being divided against one another. Because I do want to be clear, at the end of the day, the way these systems operate, it's always been about divide and conquer. It's up to us to challenge how we view ourselves in relation to these issues and to educate ourselves on how these systems actually operate, whether it's studying budgets, whether it's studying policy, whether it's studying the power of the police union, what they can do and what they can't do. And ultimately, it's up to us. We are tasked with reimagining and redefining what public safety is, because as it's currently operated, none of us are safer. At the end of the day, I believe transformation can only occur from close proximity. When we come together and we have conversations like this, when we're allowed and open ourselves up to understand, to view life through the lens of other people, because I always have a saying that I always share. We don't know what we don't know. It's up to us to become educated. It's up to us to figure out new ways. Because at the end of the day, like they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. I want to end on somewhat of a, I guess, a good note. I'm really honored and just humbled by all the amazing people in the city and island of Alameda. In fact, I've been so impressed by you all that I'm going to stop my petition. I'm going to rescind it. I always wanted to rename this county after Oakland. I've had some bad experiences in Alameda growing up in East Oakland, whether it's going to the bowling alley, whether it's going to the beach. Even they had the little club for people 16 and over, the Twilight Zone back in the days. And I've been pulled over at least 3 times by Alameda police officers, given bogus tickets. And then when I go to court, they don't show up. That creates a problem. It creates a drain when you have to take time off of your work. It also creates a mental drain. And that's the last thing I want to leave us with. We have to understand that we're seeing and experiencing is not just a story. I want people to stop this element of voyeurism. When we talk about our experiences, these are real. We're human beings with feelings, thoughts, and emotions. And when we're going back to slavery, that wasn't just a physical institution. We're not talking about a situation to where people were just working for free. My ancestors were subjected to the worst cruel and inhumane thing that anyone can devise. And because they were essentially considered chattel property, you can do anything you want with your property. I can take this hand sanitizer and I can just throw it across the room and no one can hold me accountable. That's how my ancestors were treated and relegated. And in a lot of ways, that's how these systems still continue to operate. There was no healing available. From slavery to Jim Crow, even today, seeing the repeated images of Black men publicly lynched is a serious phenomenon. So for me, at the end of the day, what I always share is, well, there can be no reconciliation without reparation. I will say it again, there can be and will be no reconciliation without reparation. If I went into a store and I stole a candy bar, society can fully expect and will approve of me being arrested, charged, convicted, sentenced, with the clear responsibility and obligation of paying restitution to that store owner. That's for a candy bar. Why do we assume anything less for human beings? So I want to thank you all for this opportunity.
I can listen to you all day, John. I truly can. I need you on a speed dial. I need to call you every day because the words you say, I feel it in my spirit. I don't feel like it's just rhetoric, what you're saying. I feel it. And I think when you talk about healing, and I'm really looking at what I'm feeling in society right now, is an opportunity. If we don't seize this opportunity, it's going to be a shame. Correct. I think the reason so many people saw George Floyd get murdered is, you're right, COVID-19. They were home. They were at the TV. They weren't out and about. And so there were more eyes on the screen. But you, like me, I have experienced and seen friends with police brutality in my own life. And so it's so good to hear your experience, because you have the experience of being incarcerated, being in the justice system, did you wrong. You've lived the story, although you like to call it a story, you've lived this experience that you're able to come back and share with all of us. And for me, that's so special, because I don't have that experience. I've never been incarcerated. And I do want to have the lens, all the lenses, because I believe in, I am a believer of unity. And my saying is to honor the differences, but to connect the similarities. Because divided, I think you said something that I always say as well, is the way businesses do. They divide and conquer. The way wars do, you divide and conquer. And when people are united, you have a stronger wall. You have more of an opportunity. There's different roles for people to play. And so, as Rashid mentioned, yes, I do get a lot of calls from people that are not of African descent, or that are calling me, what can I do? We have a different take on that. Yes, he's right. I'll take the calls. I'll take the questions, because for me, it's going to be in numbers. We have tried to do black movements since the beginning of time, and it hasn't been successful the way we need it. So I've been saying we got to do something different. I think COVID is allowing us the opportunity to get creative and to do something different. I mean, for example, the Zoom. We probably couldn't all be in the same room having this conversation without COVID. You know, I've been impressed with how many people, all the people, and myself, I'm very diligent about the COVID, you know, and all these people, thousands of people in Alameda are coming out, risking it with masks, trying to do social distancing, but it's important to them. And they're all colors. And so for me, yes, it is, how can we utilize, whatever you want to call them, white allies, white accomplices, white human beings, Hispanic human beings, Asian human beings. The Filipino Student Union has been one leading some of these huge protests for the African American people. They're not Filipino, they're not African American, but in their heart and spirit, they're holding these gatherings. They're not, I'm telling you, you got to get some rest. So I want to make sure that anyone that wants to, from their heart, and really wants to step into a role that can allow this healing to take place in Alameda, yes, you can contact me. But be sincere, because if you're not sincere, I'll call you out. But we have to do, Alameda is a unique space. I do work at the Point, and so I am around a large part of the African American community every day on the base. And like Rashid has shared, some of them won't go past the Webster, still, to this day. So I want that to be a no-go. I want them to be able to go all the way out to Tanya's school, which is on the East End, go visit her for coffee, and not worry about getting back home. And so there is reform that needs to happen with the police. We need to make sure the right people are in place in our political office. We need to make sure that we as a community step up. So instead of, for me, someone said at one of the protests, I'm not calling people out. I want to call people in. People may have made choices in their past, like I've made some choices in my past. But it's time that we got to do that self-reflection. I think, Tanya, you said that, about self-reflection it comes to. And how can I use my experiences to call people in? Because we're not going to heal as an island until every person is called in some way. People have the choice to not be called in, but I think an invitation to be called in is important. And so for any folks out there that are not of African descent, that want to be a part, and I know a lot of you guys are on here because you've been asking me, yes, step up, come on in, step on in. If you got a skill that can help build a movement here in Alameda, let's do this. You know, like I said before, honor the differences. Honor the differences. Yes, there are differences about us, but connect in the similarities. That's where we grow, learn, heal, and become a powerful island. So on that note, I want to go ahead and turn, I believe you have Kiki's video. Yep. Correct? All right. All right. Thank you.
Greetings. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Happy Pride. As I jokingly have been saying, happy Pruneteenth. It is a cause of celebration, and it's kind of interesting. I just wanted to give a little history about Juneteenth and my personal involvement and knowledge about Juneteenth. As many of you know, that has been reported, Juneteenth started actually on June 19th, 1865, 155 years ago. And one story was that was the day in the state of Texas that folks were let know that slavery was over, that they were free. Now, so June 19th was the date. So it's been 155 years. Now, the reality is that slavery officially ended on January 1st, 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. And the story goes that the folks in Texas in particular didn't know until this declaration from the general, and they were celebrating it as Juneteenth. Now, the other corollary to that is that in some other states, they didn't know until after that date, supposedly until the 13th Amendment was enacted, which was in December of 1865. Now, when I was growing up, I knew nothing about Juneteenth, and I probably didn't know about Juneteenth until maybe 20 years ago. And I think I didn't start writing about Juneteenth until 10 years ago. So it's unclear how common it is, although many people say that in Texas, it has been celebrated for a long time. But obviously it is a celebration. It is a celebration of freedom and of the end of slavery. One other story that I had heard that I haven't read about recently is the reason it was called Juneteenth is, again, this notion that the word that slavery was over, took a long time, more than 2 years, 2.5 years. And people weren't sure when the public knew about it, but it was sometime in the teens of June. So June 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, et cetera. That was another story that I had heard about Juneteenth. But I'm just very happy and honored that my city, the city of Alameda, is honoring Juneteenth, and not a Johnny-come-lately, but has been honoring it for a number of years and will continue to honor it. And we will continue to celebrate, and all of us will celebrate. And it really is about freedom and knowing that you're free. And I wanted to end with something that I read today in Iyanla Vanzant's 25th anniversary edition in Acts of Faith. It's daily meditations for people of color, and it's June 19th. And it starts with one of my favorite people, a quote, Sammy Davis Jr., and the quote is, "The main point in the game of life is to have fun. We are afraid to have fun because somehow that makes life too easy." And then Iyanla writes, "We live in a world that thrives on fear. Fear of living, fear of dying, fear of having too much, fear of not having enough. When people find our weaknesses, we become fearful of them. If we demonstrate our strength, people become fearful of us. Fear is an accepted way of life. We are fearful our past will be repeated. We are fearful that we have no chance in the future. We are fearful of one another. We are fearful of those who are fearful of us. When we allow fear to control our daily lives, we run the risk of remaining where we don't want to be, in fear. We must confront the things we fear, people and situations, believing the Spirit of God is within us. By doing the very thing we fear, we tap into a force that directs and protects us, unleashing the power that has brought us this far. When we give in to our fears and avoid taking chances, it is unlikely that we will ever overcome the very things we fear. And the affirmation is, as my sense of power increases, my fear about life decreases. So happy Juneteenth, happy Pride. Let's not live in fear. Happy Freedom Day. Thank you.
Thank you. That is Kiki Monifa from BlackHistoryEveryday.com. And make sure you check her out on there. And yes, thank you so much. And so I want definitely, looking at the time, I want to make time for our community to chat in and any comments. And so Sarah, you can go ahead and begin.
Yeah, well, I've gotten a couple of questions, and people are free to ask questions through the chat feature as well if you have additional questions. And I just also wanted to recognize that we have a number of elected officials on this celebration today. Mayor Marilyn Ezzy Ashcraft, Vice Mayor John Knox White, Councilmember Jim Odie, Councilmember Millie Avella, and also School Board President Mia Bonta are all joining us. The first question is, says, what can we do to encourage a curriculum change in AUSD's history courses? Other schools in the Bay Area offer African American studies. And I'm just going to ask the second question at the same time because it's related, which is that how can parents support the effective implementation of anti-racist programs across all schools in AUSD?
So anyone want to answer?
I can unmute
looking at
Tanya.
Looking at Tanya.
So that's a secondary question. And I actually, as a mom of a high schooler, share that same question. But what I will say is that I really believe in the current leadership that we have in AUSD right now. I believe that those that hold those executive leadership positions really are leading with an equity lens. And we just spent a week in a June Learning Conference where we really dove very deeply into this idea of race, of bias, of disproportionality, of culturally responsive practices. And so with this new leadership, we are really starting to do the work. We have leadership that names specifically that our outcomes for Black children specifically and unapologetically are unacceptable. And then also naming that children of color and our second language learners are also equally underserved. So the first thing is to admit the reality. And then we are going on a journey as a group of practitioners in this district to start doing the work.
Yes, I can concur with that. Working for the district, like I said, for numerous years, I've been really excited about the leadership that we have now. And just working with some of them, I work for, like I said, APC, so I have to work with them. I'm a case manager, so I have to work with them. And it's just been amazing, the difference. You can walk in the district office and it feels different. And we have, currently we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Tanya, but we have 3 African-American principals, correct? At the time, you, Tammy Harris, and Danielle Farr-Matthews over at Ruby Bridges. And Ruby Bridges is dear to my heart. We know her story, and so it's been great to see leadership as far as principals in these schools for children to see, so definitely.
There is some work around thinking about the systems and who holds power and who holds voice, and how do we do targeted outreach to diversify our teaching staff and just folks that are in AUSD as well. So again, the first step is actually having the conversation, starting to have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
Robbie, Susan Davis is on the line from AUSD, and she has an answer that she can share.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I just
Hi,
wanted
Susan.
to add, hi, Robbie. This is a wonderful event. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add a few things. It's actually state law right now that we do ethnic studies for our secondary students, and AUSD will be starting those classes next year, meaning in 2020-21. So we'll have more details about that coming up soon. And I also wanted to say that we have just recently hired 2 more African-American administrators, one for, well, 2 more administrators of color, one for Lincoln and one for Encinal Junior and Senior High School. And also the strategic plan that our leadership team was beginning to formulate before the pandemic started was very much focused on helping to increase learning opportunities and achievement for African-American students. And that work is being pulled through into the redesign work for next year. So it is indeed a very exciting time in our district.
Awesome, excellent. Thank
Robbie,
you for that.
I unmuted School Board President Mia Bonta as well, so she can answer. But I'm going to ask one more question that's related as well. Just so, and these are different versions of the same question, but this question specifically asks, what policy changes can we institute to better to ensure that we do a better job teaching American history in our schools in a more expansive and accountable way, including not just the roots of slavery, but the Tulsa Massacre and institutional policies that perpetuated racism in housing, education, and other systems through the 20th and 21st centuries. So what can we do to formally make celebrating Juneteenth part of our community? And hopefully this person says Barbara Lee will succeed in making this a national holiday as well.
Anyone could answer. I mean, for myself, I mean, like John said, Barbara Lee speaks for me. And so, you know, I think for myself in Alameda, definitely the schools. I think the schools, for me, the education is going to be key. But I also think collaborating with the city of Alameda and having the officials start looking into, you know, making this a national holiday. You know, I know some other cities are doing that. We are a small spot on the United States map, but just starting to have those conversations, what it would take. What does it take to support Barbara Lee and making it happen for us here in Alameda? So that's my take, but others, please chime in.
If I could just quickly chime in and share that my partner in this work, Assembly Member Rob Bonta, is actually put forward. This is Mia Bonta, sorry, a legislation to recognize Juneteenth as a statewide holiday and in place of Columbus Day. So, and I just also, on the issue of policies related to our schools, one thing that I've been pushing for and really hope that we take up as a school district is doing a very concerted equity audit in terms of the access not only to ethnic studies, African American studies courses, but more specifically ensuring that our students have equity in terms of access related to college going courses and those gateway courses that ensure that we have the ability to achieve post-secondary success.
Nice. And for all those, that's Mia Bonta, Alameda Unified School District School Board President, married to Rob Bonta, stays there, and she's known as the better Bonta.
Yes, I agree. I associate myself with those comments. Hi, Mia. Can I make a quick comment on this point? As a father,
yes,
as a single father, I think it's
please.
important. There's a saying, if you send your kids to school to be educated by Caesar, don't be surprised they come back home acting like Romans. Woo. So I believe that our job is also to ensure that our children are being educated. We're supposed to also supplement that. You don't go to a bank, cash a check, and just assume they're going to give you back the correct change. So the way I show up, it's not just a matter of everything is on the other person or the entity. We have to also assume some of that responsibility. And just by way of some insight, I think that really needs to be addressed as it relates to curriculum is the fact that corporations more often than not are writing these books. And we've heard stories of, for example, revisionist history is taking place right before our eyes. I've seen a situation where parents were outraged to discover that their kids were being taught that our ancestors came over as migrant laborers. Migrant laborers. We're seeing this happen because these things are intentional. And the last thing I would say is this, I have a real problem, a real issue when we segment our curriculum. When we say things like ethnic studies, because the word ethnic is derived from heathen. So we have to be aware of the power of semantics and language because our brains associate on that deep level. That's the problem with America because default is white. Let's be real on that. We have to name that. We have to stop that. You don't just try to find little pieces to put in, because what's really happening is twofold. I don't want to take too much time on this. White supremacy doesn't just do a disservice to people of color, meaning you open this 1,000-page history book and someone like me see 2 paragraphs related to Black people. 1619, 20 Negroes came over. 1964, Dr. King won a Nobel Peace Prize. It creates for me a sense of inferiority. But I also want to offer the reverse aspect of that. What happens when little Timmy goes to school and open a book and everyone who does something great in this nation looks like him? It instills within him a false sense of superiority, right? And an attitude and an expectation of success and to succeed. And when he doesn't get these things that he was taught and indoctrinated with, it opens a door to blame other populations. Because those of us understand we have to work twice and 3 times as hard. So all these things begin when we're little. And at the end of the day, as someone shared with me, the word education is derived from the Latin educere. It means to draw the best out of. We got to stop cramming in this ridiculous information. I've never on a job interview had somebody ask me who's the 16th president of the United States. Let's teach our kids restorative justice. Let's teach them financial intelligence, right? Yeah. We're giving them credit cards at 18, don't know anything about a credit score. We got to reimagine how we approach these issues because we're in the 21st century now. So I end there. Let me stop preaching because I'll pass my collection plate around in a minute.
I'm gonna hold a call one day just for you, John.
Well, John, the next question is definitely for you, so don't mute yourself yet. But before that, I want to just read this comment, which is from a 10-year-old girl who's listening. And she says, I want to say that I'm happy to hear that more people of color are being hired in the district. I've always loved all of my teachers at my school, but I would also like to have some teachers that look like me too. Thank you really hard for working on this. So with that, question for John, somebody wrote, actually a couple people have wrote this question, that they understand that reparations are necessary and they want to understand some examples of how this would occur.
Excellent question. Let's just start with the historical context. So for example, when the concept of 40 acres and a mule was introduced, we have to be clear, not every former slave received that. In fact, what happened in many instances, slave owners received reparations for lost property, lost wealth. For me, there's different forms of reparations. I'll give you one that most people don't think of. So in the work that we do at Just Cities, we address the systemic barriers. As I mentioned, being formerly incarcerated, we discover there are literally thousands of restrictions on people with a record. A form of reparations to me is, it's not just saying someone has finished their sentence. It's why are their policies created to begin with, to prevent folks from successfully reintegrating back into society. So a form of reparations and in all barriers. A clear example, in the cities of Berkeley and Oakland, we passed a fair chance housing ordinance that would not allow landlords to discriminate on the basis of a criminal record. Because we know when we're talking about criminal records, we're really talking about racism. We're talking about the over-policing of communities of colors and Black people and how that contributes and creates the mass incarceration phenomenon. So when people return back home to society, even now in a city like Oakland, through our research, 73% of people we spoke to in encampments have a criminal record. People are barred and banned. They have people in prison who would take classes, right? And they would get this certificates, right? They demonstrate they have the aptitude for the work. Some of us even work for private corporations for 5 years for pennies on a dollar. Then we come home and the same entity say, I can't hire you because you have a record. Why do you thought I was in prison helping old ladies across the street? So for me, that's a form of reparations, looking at this from a systemic standpoint and removing all barriers.
Nice, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that?
Well, I'll just add that somebody on the call suggests that John Jones run for president. So.
Yeah, I agree.
What did I do to this person? You must don't like me. You want that for me?
Oh, I'm telling you, you got my vote.
The next question, yeah, just one last question actually, which is what can the city do to expand housing opportunities, particularly home ownership opportunities?
I see the Mayor, Marilyn Ashcraft on the line. You want to take that one?
I'll take a shot at that one, Robbie. And thank you so much for putting this inspiring event together, and all the speakers were astounding. And because it's a small world, Akila, Monifa, Kiki, we were law school classmates at Santa Clara University Law.
Oh my gosh.
Back in the day, and we just ran into each other when I was out on the campaign trail running for mayor. So it's been a fun reunion. But anyway, so the city of Alameda, yes, we have a sordid history of racial discrimination in our housing policies. Rashid touched on it so well. And one of the things we're doing, so when we're looking at models of housing that developers are coming to us to present, we need to be demanding more diversity of housing, meaning not just for rental units, but we need to also be offering affordable for sale units. And the city of Alameda does have down payment assistance for buyers who qualify, who are income qualified for affordable housing. So I think we need to do more of that. And I know on the November ballot, I'll just give a little plug that I'm proud that the strong majority of the city council voted to place Measure A, at least the first part of Measure A, which is a 47-year-old charter amendment from the 70s that said there shall be no multifamily housing in the city of Alameda, period, full stop. There's certainly workarounds to that, and you could say, well, we've built multifamily housing, but there's a lot of hoops developers have to jump through to do that. So we are, wanting to create more housing opportunities for people of all income levels, but especially in the affordable levels. But yes, when we're creating affordable housing, we need to keep an eye on the goal of requiring that a certain percentage of those be offered for sale. And the council has some exciting opportunities coming up soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
And lots of other work to do. And Robbie, you're going to be working alongside of us, right?
Yeah, I'm there. We can have a conversation. Yep. I want to give applause to the mayor, because like I said, the youth have been leading the way, and I'm so glad that Congressman Barbara Lee echoed that same sentiment, because they really have been. And the mayor has been to, I think, just about every one. And I can see within her, she's actually listening to the youth. She's listening to the community, and immediately she's been taking action. So I know a lot of times political offices, they don't get the good stuff. They don't get to hear the praise. They want to complain. So I definitely want to highlight that, because, when people make a vote for people, they're making a vote that this person is going to listen and act according to what maybe my need is, or maybe what the city needs. And just seeing that gives me so much hope for Alameda that we really can make change. I do want to note also, we had a meeting that she put together with a group of the youth, myself, I think it was 3 officers and the police chief, am I correct? And two amazing facilitators that really broke it down really well. And I believe the youth left when we talked, they felt heard, and they were shocked at the response of the other side of the table. So that's the kind of healing I'm talking about. It definitely was a tough conversation all the way around. And I think when we all left, there was a bit of healing. It was beginning to heal. Not saying it's healed by a long shot, but definitely a beginning. And that's when I say honor the differences, connect the similarities, because we have to listen to each other. We have to, because we cannot let the steam die down again, and then we left with a divide. That would just be so sad. I mean, I keep saying, no one's talking about the kids in the cages anymore. I mean, let's get real. So I don't want that to happen to this cause. This is the way it usually happens. Something else happens and everyone forgets about it. I want us to stay diligent on this path, and I appreciate, yes, Mayor, I want to say that out loud. And that's just coming from just a person to person. I appreciate the support you've given, so thank you.
Thank you, Robbie, and I appreciate the wisdom and all the education you've helped me gain, and so much so in these last couple of weeks. But the city council is moving forward. I know I think I have again a quorum on this call, but just at our last meeting, this was a week of meetings, the Monday night meeting that Robbie's talking about. By the way, I shared that I was on a conference call with Congresswoman Lee yesterday with the mayors in her district, and I shared that experience, and she thought that was marvelous. She knows our two facilitators too, and who came from Oakland, and but on Tuesday night, the council had its meeting and we voted on our budget, and to come back and relook at the police department budget after we've had the opportunity to have community forums about how to look at policing and how to reimagine policing in our community and many other things. Wednesday night, we had a special meeting just to start that conversation. But one of the takeaways is that we formed we named 5 subcommittees that we want citizen participation in. And I want participation. I said on a town hall, Mia Bonta and John Knox-White and I and some others were on a town hall with high school students at Alameda High earlier today. And we, I want African American or people of color on every one of those 5 subcommittees. I also want multi-generational. I want to hear from the youth on those 5 subcommittees. So we will stay in touch because I want to make sure that we are well informed as a council, and this is the time to make change. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I just want to know our time's up. Is there any more questions?
Nope, no more questions.
Okay, so I just want to just end with, first of all, thank you to all of the speakers today. It touches my heart that you showed up, give your time. I know that, this is a time where I'm trying to do Black Achievers, just get the education out to people, to make change that way. It's a lot of times it's just me, and I've been feeling very alone doing this work. So it's great now to have some steam behind it, some momentum, and people that want to step up and help. So thank you for that. I want to thank my dear friend Tanya Harris for, coming out and giving her wisdom. I know she doesn't like to talk on the spot, but she did amazing. And I'm super proud and happy about her wisdom and what she was able to share. And just her example of how to step into a principal or administrative role and really make a difference. And I've seen the difference, and so accolades to her. I want to thank my brother Rafi Shabazz for bringing the history, as he always does, to Alameda, the truth, and I appreciate you. I love you. Keep doing the fight. We're going to work alongside each other, hopefully, to help make this change and to really revive and really get started and get some energy around the Black movement here in Alameda. It is time. It is time that our brothers and sisters step beyond Webster Street. And I think the time is now to really do that. And if Uncle Lester's on here, Uncle Lester, you're tapped on too as our elder. And I want to thank, of course, my goodness gracious, John Jones III. I love that third. You are a man of wisdom. Like I said, I can listen to you. Expect me to be tapping your phone number a little more often because I really think that I can learn so much from you. You have a huge perspective on this that I haven't experienced, but I'm so open to learn from you. And so I hope that our partnership and our friendship can grow in that matter. And Kiki Monifa, if she's able to check on later, thank you always for your wisdom, for your example, for being consistent with your message. And so I thank you for that. And I thank Sarah Henry. Your position, you got to see this friend, the communications director, is that right?
Public information officer, whatever.
Okay, get your title. But she's a dear friend, and I'm going to tell you, I am not a technology person. My daughter was here 10 years old trying to help me hook up. She had to come to the rescue. I'm just truthful. I am not. I know what I'm good at, and technology I am not. And so I thank her for just always being professional, always willing to support Black Achievers Alliance. And find ways that we can work together. Because I am, like I said, I am about unity. And so I love getting the city, I love getting the district, and I love getting community to get together. That's how we're going to do this, you guys. We got to, tackle the education, the city, the whole, and social, the community. And so, like I said earlier, I welcome, allies, accomplices reaching out to me. What can they do? I call you in. If you made a mistake in the past, let's forgive that. I call you in to be a part of something positive. and that's for all shades. I especially call forth my black brothers and sisters. It is time that we take our space in Alameda. It is time for us no longer to be afraid to walk freely and to flow freely around this island. The days have got to end when you can't go from West End to East End. I always say I want a symbolic bridge to bridge that, because it is such a shame. I'm very fortunate. I did come up, with a single mom, but she taught me how to flow freely. I never, I just go where I go, you know what I mean? And so it hurts my heart to know that some of my people are not free like that. And so that has been my personal mission, my personal vision, is to see that happening. So thank you guys for joining today. This is a start of that. I am going to be doing some other series, hopefully with this Zoom platform, some education, some more education. I got some people coming in. But what I want to end, I see your hand, Sarah, you can end, but I just want to remind people, this is Black Achievers Alliance. Please support us through AUSC, through the school, however we put the Unity Picnic together, show up, because we are honoring the differences, but we are connecting the similarities. Thank you so much. Sarah?
Robbie, I just want to say you're getting a lot of thanks and a lot of love on Facebook and on the Zoom chat, and just so you know how much people appreciate you. And then finally, I just wanted to say, I know that you're working to reawaken the NAACP here in Alameda, and so I wanted to ask if you could let folks know how they can get involved.
Right now, legally, we can't claim NAACP because it is an entity. You know what I mean? It's the oldest and boldest establishment Black movement. It's really a biracial, started off biracial. So we can't legally claim it right now. So what you will hear is change that sustains. And I actually got that from a dear friend, Mia Bonsa. She said it in one of her speeches, and it struck my heart. And that's what needs to happen: change that sustains. Not change that's going to just be now and then dissolve. We need it to really stand firm. And so that is kind of like the grassroots organization of group, because I'm trying to make sure we get a platform going, so that when the time comes that we can say, whoa, we're NAACP, we have something underneath us. And so you will hear change that sustains. There's change that sustains at gmail.com, and you'll see people around, they're posting all over to be a part of that. That is for anyone to be a part of. There is, like I said, there's the organization part of it. So if you have skills in different areas that can help build that, I'll call you in. Now, in our leadership, it will remain Black. I mean, that's the foremost. We need to empower that. We need to stick with that. But I believe that it takes a community to really build anything. And Alameda is unique, where it is small enough to do that. I grew up in San Francisco. I could see it. I have a bigger city. Alameda is small. Most people ride their bikes around. So it is small enough that we really can make an impact. We really can make a change that's going to sustain. And that's my drive. That's my call in for people who want to do. Please do. Don't be shy. I'm very approachable. And let's do this together, you guys. Ashe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. Thank you, Sarah, for that.
And just a reminder, I'm plugging it into the chat feed, but it's alamedachangethatsustains@gmail.com. So folks can email you and get involved. There you go.
And let me say something. You know what? I'm talking about the importance of having a team behind you that does that stuff. My mind don't work like that. I come from spirit, and I have a team right now that is on the back end, checking, and they corrected me. So thank you, team, for stepping up and doing that. I can say what I'm good at and what I'm not.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you guys so much. From my heart. Ashe. Black Lives Matter all day, every day.